This video will contain spoilers for the original Final Fantasy VII, Remake, Rebirth, events yet to be covered in Part 3, and weirdly enough, God of War Ragnarok. Please proceed with caution if you do not want the potential events of the upcoming game spoiled. Please be respectful to each other and let's put our energy into creating positive discussion. I hope you enjoy. This video is going to be shorter than the videos that I usually put out, but I do think it's an important scene to talk about, and a scene that I haven't really seen talked about much. So let's talk about perspective today. Perspective is something that can easily go unnoticed. In the current gaming landscape, a flowchart of figuring out what perspective a game is would look something like this. And I mean, that's completely understandable. Perspective in any form of media is rarely used as more than just a tick box in defining your game or movie or book. It's not often used as a narrative tool, and for good reason. It's hard to make people notice. I say that as someone who has consumed, studied and created a lot of media in my time. You really need to have your head screwed on to be constantly asking what perspective a scene is taken from. And that's completely understandable. Perspective doesn't generally change once it's been established, so it's not something we usually watch for. But Remake and Rebirth have a lot of emphasis put on perspective, on changing points of view and on differing worldviews. And there's one scene that's snuck in there that tries to fly under our radar. So stick around, we'll have a look at it and talk about what its implications will be going into Part 3. So the critically minded among you will already be thinking about what I'm getting at here, and you're maybe already aware of the scene I'm about to talk about, but indulge me for a minute or two. As a wise old wizard once said, every good story deserves some embellishment. Remake, Rebirth and Final Fantasy as a series are told from a third-person perspective usually, meaning our gameplay handles as if we were an outsider to the story. We see the party from an omniscient and omnipresent camera that we can control, but that camera isn't attached to any person or other player. It's tried and tested, and clearly it works great for Final Fantasy and action games in general. First person, on the other hand, we're also all acutely aware of. Since Doom and Wolfenstein, we've all completely taken for granted that we know what first person perspective is, but for the sake of continuity, let's define it. First person perspective is when a story is written or told from a character's personal perspective. Usually this comes in the form of the player's head basically being replaced by a camera to fully put us in the boots of the character we're playing. Obviously there's fringe cases where you can have mixed perspectives. Take God of War Ragnarok for example. A firmly third-person game, but some scenes can be creative with their use of perspective. Athena isn't a real person anymore. She exists entirely as haunting memories to Kratos. But there are scenes from a third-person camera perspective where we are experiencing Kratos' first-person reality, seeing Athena's maddening persistence in his world, despite his titan attempts to lock her away in his psyche. If Atreus were in the room during these scenes, he wouldn't see her, making this a particularly interesting blend of first and third perspectives. First and third person perspectives are easy, and they work perfectly for the style of media that video games are. But as you've probably guessed by now, there is another, and if you can count, you can already tell what it is. As I'm writing this, I know of only one other second person perspective moment in gaming, and it's in Driver San Francisco. It's a mind-melting scene where you're in a street race against another driver, but when the gameplay actually starts, the camera perspective is from the driver's car. It takes you off guard because Driver San Francisco lets you mentally hop between cars, so it's not unusual to be behind a new wheel. But in this particular scene, you're seeing the game through the eyes of the person in the car behind you, and when you steer the car, you realise that you're controlling the car in front of you. You're viewing the player character from a second character's perspective. Welcome to the second person perspective. Lots of things happen in dreamlike states in Remake and Rebirth. I personally think that the developers like to keep things more ambiguous to keep us guessing about the true nature of the game's reality. Constant redirection and ambiguity is the name of the game. There's one scene in Rebirth, after the party arrives in the gold saucer, that's been tucked away in the back of my mind since I first played Rebirth through. While the party are surrounded by flash and glitter and happiness, busied and distracted by the gold saucer, there's a grim reminder of what's going on in the outside world once Cloud goes to sleep. One of Zack's chapters starts, opening with him saying, "Sorry man, I feel like I failed you." Cloud's eyes slowly open and we see Zack hunched in front of us. The first time I played the scene, I remember thinking it felt weird, but I couldn't put my finger on exactly why. Something about the scene didn't sit right with me. It just didn't feel like the rest of the game, and it stuck with me because of this. Every now and then throughout the campaign and my subsequent playthroughs, I think of this scene and I didn't know why. But somewhere in my far too many hours since then, I realised that this scene felt so weird because it's told from a second person perspective. We're seeing Zack through Cloud's eyes, but we're controlling Zack when he busies himself looking after an unconscious Aerith and Cloud. So why the perspective shift? On its own, this doesn't seem like a big deal, right? Well, when we consider that this is a conscious choice on the developer's part, it becomes more significant. Game development on this scale doesn't just happen. You don't just decide to do a scene from a completely odd perspective and put it in the final game without oversight and approval from your boss along the way. So if this was a conscious decision, why do it? What does the shift in perspective change about the scene? As I see it, there's a couple of options. Firstly, the second person perspective could be simply used to indicate that we're in Cloud's dream. We're inside his head, and because of that, he's controlling the events of the dream. If that were true though, we'd have to assume that all of Zack's visions are dreams, because this particular scene is not exactly one that's irrelevant to Zack's whole story in Rebirth. It can't be easily written off as a dream, unless the second person perspective could be used as an ultra subtle hint that parts of Cloud's psyche are lost in the livestream. We know that Cloud falls into the livestream later in the original game, so we can assume that'll happen in part 3 too. We also know that Hojo has done his fair share of tinkering with Cloud using a lot of Mako and Jenova cells. Following along from this, there's every possibility that Jenova cells in Sephiroth, Cloud, and all of the Black Robes and soldiers are acting like pinholes in a dam, allowing Jenova to have limited control and exert a slow, corrupting force on the livestream. If that were the case, Cloud being encased in a tank of Mako and experimented on could have led him to have already lost part of himself in the livestream, like a prelude to his episode in Midiel in part 3. The true chronology of what's happening in Rebirth is still up for debate. Both returning and new fans can agree on that for sure. Whether we're seeing multiple timelines play out, livestream manipulation and corruption, or just Cloud slowly losing his mind is still all up in the air. It could even be a combination of all of those things. The second person perspective scene was slipped in there for a reason, and I personally found it incredibly effective in making the scene feel uncomfortable and abnormal. The chances of this being an indicator of some bigger, more obscured plot point are definitely believable in my opinion. But what do you think? Masterful misdirection or narrative nonsense? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to follow for more Final Fantasy VII deep dives as we get closer to part 3's inevitable reveal. Thanks for spending some of your internet time with me today, and I hope you have a great one.